Hello, everybody. I'm Russell Hill, your host of WTF, and that is What the Fixed Ops to all of you out there. Special day today. I'm joined today by...
I'm Charity. I'm your co-host here, and we have Jonathan Lampros, who is the COO of Pro Roofing America with us today. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, now probably everybody's wondering right now why we have a guest from the home improvement business on an automotive podcast.
Yeah, what the hell? Roofing? What are you doing? No, go ahead.
Well, let me ease your curiosity. Jonathan spent 23 years in the automotive business as the executive general manager of John Elway Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram. He started at age 19 in the automotive business, and today we're going to learn how a series of events turned a near lifelong commitment to automotive upside down. So, Jonathan, just introduce yourself to everyone and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. Yeah, I started actually from Omaha, Nebraska. Was going off to college to wrestle, and first attached my rotator cuff, and then ruined my eye, as it's evident. And so said, well, I'm going to go rehab and get better. And my brother said, come out to Colorado, because he was going to school of mines. So I packed all my stuff up and I came out here. Car breaks down and I go, oh, what am I going to do? I needed a job. And so I walked into a dealership that was probably a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile down the road from me. And I sat down and said, I could detail cars. So I just needed a job. I didn't care what it was. And the guy said, go grab a seat. And I sat down for 6.5 hours before they came out and talked. And they're like, you're still here? And yes, sir. You told me to wait. I was in a certain tie. He goes, you know about selling cars? I said, no, sir. He goes, well, if you do, $1,500 a month guaranteed for the first 2 months. Said, yes, sir.
Yeah.
And that was Brian Schreiber hired me all those many years ago. And then quickly I rose the ranks because, I had that wrestler's mentality. I just worked hard. Everybody was quite a bit older than me. When I was 19, they were probably the next youngest guy, Scott Johnson. I remember he was 32. So there was a big age difference then. And about a year later, my then high school sweetheart girlfriend moved down. And then not long after that, she said I was pregnant. And, whoa, man, 2 days before my 21st birthday. So just before all the fun was going to start, it, stopped. And we had our first child, got married, and now have 5 children. And my oldest is 26. So I have 26, 24, 22, 18, 13. I have to remember all these kids. I have 4 daughters and 1 son. So once we started, we kind of didn't stop as anything. I always kind of take it to a maximum. So, but I rose in the car ranks pretty fast, got to GSM by the time I was 25, and then sat in that for almost 9 years. And then moved to the point of GM, and then became a managing partner with Mr. Elway, Todd Mall, and Mitch Pierce, and rode that ranks until sold it. Had a chance to sell a couple of stores, and so that's a 29 years, wrapped up into a real quick synopsis there.
That is. It obviously got under your skin, and you were very driven. You appear to be that way from just about everything you do. Just maximizing and giving it your all. What John Elway and that particular dealership is renowned. Everybody knows about it. It's like, man, those are some credentials. And for the time that you were there and then becoming, a partner, that's a testament. So what was there how long was it? What got under your skin? What was it you loved about the business?
Well, interesting you said that. When I was a 19-year-old kid, I got into this business and I just saw the great salesmen. They were just, these guys, they were gunslingers, but they were good, man. They knew how to sell, and they taught you the ins and outs, but then they were chaos. Right. Everything else was chaos. They would leave, and thank goodness they'd sneak me into the bar, but I was too young, and, they would start drinking, and they'd drink all night long, and they'd be back the next morning and off. There were problems with their family and their wife and all these other things. And it was just chaos. I remember guys saying, hey, there's no way you can remain married in this business. And I just remember, not for you, because at 10 o'clock at night when you should go home, you go to the bar. And so I just saw this insanity, and that was the first thing I noticed. If I didn't live my life in insanity, I might have a little bit better of an opportunity, which is kind of funny to think that alcohol would actually play such a huge role so many years later. But the other part was it was just there was no, like data stats. That nobody was doing that. So Lotus 1-2-3, I don't know if you remember that. That was a precursor or kind of a
Yes.
competitor to Excel. I learned how to use that before people, could spell spreadsheet. They didn't even know what they were. Excel was, a competitor. It wasn't even the main one. Lotus actually was. And so I learned how to use these spreadsheets, built, what I called still to this the SPP, or sold pace projected. So you knew how many you sold, what you're pacing for, what you're projecting, and it's just a mathematical formula that you could handwrite. And I did for a long time. And then I put them into an Excel sheet. And then, I got a small little team when I was 21 years old, and put the team together. And, hey, we had all this data and stats and information that we used to make smart, intelligent decisions. This is in the, the 90s.
Yeah.
This isn't when people actually were doing that and thinking about it. And, the internet didn't even really exist at that point,
Nope.
So this was stuff that people just weren't doing. And it gave me such a huge competitive advantage because my brain just thought a little bit different. So the willingness to work hard like that wrestler, the willing to live, in a discipline, what I call, the Spartan more lifestyle, committed to my wife and my children, was critically important to me. And then just, I came from in my family, everybody was really smart but me. And that's just the best way to put it. My brother was a child prodigy. My sister, same thing, brilliant. There's just the way they thought, how they all thought. I literally was just the idiot in the family. However, I did get an analytical mind coming out of that household, right? So I don't have any time in college. They're all college grads with multiple degrees and doing great things in society. And then there was my dumbass going into the car business. And you can imagine how happy my dad was. So but I was able to take that mindset, I guess, as I look back. You can only connect the dots as you look back. And I realized that I had that analytical thinking. So I applied that to something that was just chaos, right? And it was just simple for me. So I quickly, like I said, I rose the ranks until I kind of hit that, waiting for a while till I guess the spot in the general manager. But I had, Todd Mall was the controller for Doug Spedding, which was the godfather in Denver as far as the car business goes. Went to Marshall Chesrown. Same thing, and then they sold to AutoNations in '98, and he became a bigwig for AutoNations for years, and helped them build that company. And is pretty well known within the business, but I don't think people really know what he did and how critical he was.
Yeah,
never sold a car in his life, which again he came from that controller side, which is crazy. But let me tell you, when you want to talk about somebody knowing the ins and outs and details and the ups and downs, and I mean that guy taught me more about the car business, about business in general, about life too. He was a great father-like figure, to help mentor and school me, through those things. So I had him all the way through the AutoNation years. He finally left, sat out his non-compete, and that's when he put the John Elway deal together and called me, and we went back. And the great thing about that was they came in and said, "Hey, you get a chance to take something that doesn't exist. The dealership's gone." It was, after the '08 crisis, it gone into bankruptcy. We're going to start it anew. Everybody tells us we're idiots, that we shouldn't do this. This is the worst investment you can ever make. Go after it, kid. Let's see what you can do. And I was like,
that's awesome.
I went to Disneyland. I mean, it was some of the hardest times and best in my life, for sure.
You were part of that chaos for so long, and you noticed it right up front. You kind of started with the chaos, the drinking, and I'm sure there was many other things other than just the drinking that went along with that.
Oh yeah.
How did you avoid all that? Or did
you?
It's
interesting is, lucky for me, like, again, having that wrestler mentality, like and the reason why, I grew up in Omaha, in Nebraska, and everybody assumes cornfields, but I actually was the ghetto. North Omaha is a very rough place. And being a little white kid in North Omaha, and I mean, I'm not a big guy, even to this day, standing on my tippy toes. I'm 5'7", So it was never, a place where, like, safety and security, right? Like you had to become what you were going to become. And, lost my train of thought there. What we were talking about?
Well, the chaos, and where you grew up,
Yeah,
and the drugs and the alcohol and all that stuff that comes along with it. How did you avoid it, or did you slip
so
into
that,
it?
that life was chaos in itself. It was
Yeah.
There was drugs and out, there was gangs, there was everything. And my dad put me in wrestling, and the club that we wrestled at, one job was to keep us away from all of that. So build a mentality that you just, you worked out, and we got such reward from winning, I guess, individually or whatever that we got addicted to. Well, I rolled into the car business, and guess what? I found that same drug. It was crazy, but it was winning.
Yep.
It wasn't, when I remember cocaine being introduced to me, and I was like, it didn't do anything. I guess I was lucky, alcohol on the other side, nobody knew about ADHD back then, but alcohol was like, oh, this is great. It brought me down, it relaxed me. It was a completely different world. But, the uppers, it never did anything for me. So the stuff that most people were using, I guess, for the beneficial side, it didn't affect my body chemistry the same way that it did theirs. So lucky for me there. However, the flip side of it, alcohol, I noticed very quickly, I was like, this could be a problem. And so I abstained from it, and I literally put my head down. I worked my ass off 6 days a week. I was that guy that no kidding would show up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I stayed till 8, 9 o'clock. And people always said that, but all you got to do is, I love the term now today, receipts. It's like, you could talk to anybody that worked with me, and they'd go receipt after receipt after receipt. That guy was there for years. And I just focused, and it wasn't until COVID hit, that was actually where drinking got reintroduced, when the dealership for my whole life and everything stopped. And, there's a bottle at the dealership, pulled out, had a drink. It was like, whoa, where's this been? And unfortunately, in about a 3-year period of time, that's where I was introduced to the horrible side of alcohol. But crazy to think, 27 years, I'd never touched it. Isn't that weird?
Wow.
Yeah. That is pretty crazy.
That's like the complete opposite. So when I do something, like, I'm not kidding, I do it right.
Well, we can certainly tell that.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you tell us why you're in roofing now as opposed to automotive?
Yeah.
So, as you guys said, controversial. One of the things that happened, and the first time that when we left AutoNation was, and to start Elway, was back in 2010. We had seen that, at one time it was building this huge corporation, and it was a lot of fun. And they used to come to us because we were one of the first groups to sell. Denver was just a hot market. They combined three, the Emmett group, the Elway group, the Chesworth group together, and had, 18 stores. So there was a lot of buzz out here, and a lot of people wanted to know what we were doing. And, we were allowed to assist and help, and a lot of people grew within the company. And then it became a huge corporation, and all the fun stopped, right? Like it was, policies and procedures were put in place for people that should have been fired instead of, so you start policing and proceduring, the job instead of correcting and actually running a business. And so that began to happen. And so the opportunity to leave got really exciting, and I left. And unfortunately, after about 7 years, that same kind of thing began to creep in. And I didn't realize it at the time, and I didn't even putting my comment out on LinkedIn, I still didn't realize, I still really have a hard time understanding how it's so controversial and so offending. And let me explain, because I come from a very traditional home, and I don't mean like conservative as in, going to church or anything of that nature. That's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about that, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. Be a gentleman, hold a door. It's like a man, you know what I mean? Like that term, I don't know how many times my dad said that to me as a kid, as far back as I can remember. Over all the trauma. Yeah, it caused a lot of trauma. It caused me to act like a man,
What a strange concept. Yeah.
So there's a lot of things. I said my brothers are all over 6'2", 6'3". And then there's me. Like I said, I don't know, maybe the milkman or something, but something happened there, and I'm the run of the litter. And I'll never forget it. He's like, "Oh, you're little. We better make you tough." And all these things, but they always came as like almost like the silent warrior, the Spartan. We're going to turn you into a wrestler. We're going to make you tough, but we're going to show you how to be controlled, how to be polite, how to be kind, how to be courteous. You pay for dinners. The million and one things that you would do to be chivalrous and respectful and kind were huge. The protecting of, my mom and my sisters and things like that was beat into my head. Like if anybody ever said anything bad to them, we were expected to stand up and to fight at a drop of a hat, right? And so these things were just built into me. And, with the fact that we all have twice as many female ancestors as we do male ancestors, says whether you believe in God or Mother Nature, that the female is twice as important as the male. And it's our job, or we're expendable in order to protect that. Now, here I come with this attitude and mentality and mindset, and I have 4 daughters on top of it, guys. Okay? Let me give you an idea with that, right?
Come
My
on.
oldest is 26, all right? My youngest is 13. I've had a teenage daughter already running in my household nonstop for 14 years, and I've got another 5 of it. So I'll have an entire, of 19 years of my life with a teenage daughter in my house nonstop, right? I'm very, very familiar and adept with how incapable and at doing with it. But my admiration and respect and love for him is insane. And so it's just kind of funny as people kind of paint you and say you are, and I can't believe you'd say this, and why would you do this, and you're this, and what's wrong with you? It's like, time out. First of all, you have no idea where I'm coming from and who I am, and that's the biggest mistake anybody could make. And so understanding that to me, when I would say things like, hey, women and children get sick, not men, that was a call out to men to be men, right? And anybody who's been in the car business knows if anyone's allowed to get sick, well, then everybody gets sick.
That's right.
That's right. I mean? Like, I'm sorry, I ran a pretty tight ship, and I demanded people to show up on time. I demanded you to dress. I demanded everything from you, but that's why we perform so well.
But you did it too. You did those things. You set the example for them as well.
Every day. It's so funny going into the roofing business, and I'll get there, but it took me a while to transition. I wore a 3-piece suit and 6 days a week for 29 years. Like, you know what I mean? That was what I did. And so now today wearing, cargo pants, and I still do it the very best that I can. Trust me,
sure.
Pimp it out, right? Because you got it. You're a car guy, but still, it was that transition. But we literally, you showed up, you dressed right, you walked right, you talked right, you did all those things, and I just don't think that people really can begin to understand that if you allowed people to get sick. I'm not kidding. Allowed it, meaning the brown bottle flu or anything else that comes along with the car business. Then it just runs rampant. And when you lose a manager, if you're running, you've got a lot of extra people, well, then that doesn't matter. We didn't do that. We ran tight, right? I mean, I had stores that were running, selling 350 cars a month with 4 managers, including myself, right? We didn't run the place with guys all over the place. So if somebody went down, it affected the whole team. Sure. And so I really was a big believer in that. So that's you got to kind of understand that premise too. That's like the demand to perform at a high level, to not get sick, to not let your partners, your comrades down, was a big part of the culture. So me saying that was not uncommon. And then for it to be twisted, like I'm saying that women get, listen, my wife, I can't remember the last time she got sick, guys. I cannot remember it. She doesn't get sick. She is the toughest, most capable, able human, I've ever seen. She's had 5 children, right? Like, she blows me away on a constant, continuous basis. What I am saying is that I respect and I revere, right? The thing that Mother Nature, that God, that somehow, some way in society today, we've lost the value of the female. And, that comment being twisted as into being sexist, misogynist, anything other than just a guy going, listen, if any female came up to me and said, hey, I'm sick, I would believe you 100%. There's no question asked. if one of my salespeople, one of my managers walked up and said, "I'm sick," I'd go, "No, you're not." Stop. You know what I mean? Whether I believe them or not, I don't know. I'm just telling you that it's a different mentality and an attitude.
It was. Listen, it was that. It was very structured, very accountable, very disciplined on what you could and couldn't do with Van Tile. I mean, they were, when they sold to Berkshire, they were the most profitable privately held automotive group in the world at the time. But they were ruthless on what they demanded from you if you were going to be a part of the Van Tile organization.
Awesome. I loved it. Oh, I loved it.
That's where I really learned about the numbers and the math, and there's no coincidence, there's no chance, there's no luck, man. It's like luck is laboring under correct knowledge. You have the knowledge. We're going to give you the correct knowledge. Now we want you to take that knowledge and make it work for you. It's just numbers. It's math. It's a universal language.
Let me guess, at this very moment, another vendor is walking up to your lot with something shiny to sell. Before you head back and hide in your office, let me take a minute to tell you about my friend Dawn Pelham and my friends over at Global Dealer Solutions. They exist to help you find solutions to problems, some of which you might not even know you have. Best of all, they can manage as many products and services as needed for you, helping cut down on multiple vendor visits and distractions. And if you need anything, you have one number to call or text for the response all dealers like to hear. On it, GDS understands that successful dealerships require more than a set it and forget it mentality. And they'll be with you every step of the way, from setup, implementation, training, and support. And if necessary, they'll even cancel non-performing products for you. No pushback, no arguments, just a solutioneer executing course corrections as needed. Check out gdsdealers.com to learn the difference and set up a time to meet. Let's see if they're a good fit for you.
I'll never forget in 2001, that's, way before learning from a guy that worked at Van Tile how to confirm an appointment. Now today, that just seems like common sense, but even before CRMs, I'll never forget that guy showing me, hey, you set your appointment, and then the manager does, they call back and they actually confirm the appointment. I remember looking at him going, huh? You do what? That was such a form, and it was revolutionary then, right? And it worked very effectively.
Every single morning until I worked. I mean, I sat down with the uplog and talked to my immediate supervisor, and I would call and he would call. And I mean, we would, just talk about what happened to each and every deal. And back then, totally different than now. You might remember this, but some of the places, a particular place I worked, which is Toyota of Richardson, it was the go-to Toyota place back in the early 90s to mid 90s. And it's like, to actually have a job there, that was a privilege, and you were esteemed if you could make it in and make that cut. But also there was a lot of accountability. You were allowed to let one person walk. If you let them walk again, you packed your bags and you got your little box and you left. You had to turn everybody. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And that brings, first of all, Van Tile, I have the utmost respect for. I'm not kidding. When I said that, I learned so much from you guys, and they were so dialed in. And I don't think people appreciate that. And so when Warren Buffett came to buy it, he was saying, hey, I'm buying the best. That's what I'm buying. Yep. And so I maybe people got that, maybe they didn't, but I sure did when when he did that.
Yep.
But the business was so much more disciplined, detail-oriented, and it was demanding. And then if you didn't do things like I said, people, how they handled things was, the scream and the yell. And, I'll never forget, getting that deal tore up on in my face, and, because I messed up on a credit app. And, but that's what it was, right? That's the nature of that beast. And then it adjusted and changed. And I just don't think it told us all, but it did it pretty quick on it. But unfortunately, what people don't realize is that you can't, in a sales environment, in a performance demanding environment, you can't mitigate stress, right? The only way stress is mitigated is by performance. And the only way you create performance is by your ability to actually train a successful system, right? And so what everybody wants to do is they want to, hey, we need to change this, and we need to change how you talk, we need to change how you do this and all. It's like, no, however the end result comes, right? If it was because somebody screamed and yelled at you and you trained, then great. If you just picked up and you trained and you got it, great. It really didn't matter as long as you trained, because that was the end result. But what everybody's missing is they're going, well, why in the world would somebody ever yell and scream to get somebody to train us? I don't know. They just did it for thousands of years. And so that's how it happened, right? And then nobody said, hey, stop yelling and screaming, right? But we're still missing the whole point, which is in the middle. I was never a yeller or screamer. That wasn't my thing. I was very authoritative. I was intense. I wouldn't stop on you. I'd push hard, and I gave you 3 chances, and then kind of like the man Tyler, you're out. So there was that mentality, but it was always on this persistence that if you will train, if you will actually get good at the skills, then this job gets easy and you'll love it, right? And that was all we were trying to ever get done, was because I learned that there was only twice a month I ever wanted somebody to like me, and it was on paydays, right? And as long as they liked those 2 days, they would stay with me. And if they stayed with me, I didn't have to train somebody new. And I told people that all the time. I'm like, I guarantee your wife's going to like me, your spouse, your kids or whatever, because you're going to provide while you're out here. Well, I shouldn't say that. A lot of times they didn't like me because I made them work so much. There's no question about that. Dude, now mind you guys, I have like my core of guys that worked for me worked for me for 25 years. Like these guys worked for me for years. And actually the CEO of this, the roofing company I'm with, Jason Hutt, I hired him as a 19-year-old detailer so many years back. Right. So, but this other guy, Stephen Larson, he said to me one time, he goes, Jonathan, I've never made more money with anybody in my life than you. He goes, but I promise you, it's cost me a few years of my life too. So,
yeah.
So it was very demanding. It was high stress. It was push, and away we go. And then, like I said, it's almost like everything that created me, that created the success I had. All of these things, just overnight, people were like, okay, we're not accepting of that anymore. We don't want that anymore. We don't want to be held accountable. And if you're going to hold me accountable, I'm going to yell and scream and, going to HR instead of HR looking at the person going, well, this is very simple. Do your job. It became a conversation of tone. You don't like my tone. Well, shouldn't it be about what I'm saying, not how I'm saying it? No, it's all about how you're saying it, right? And it's like, well, no, guys, I get 100%. I'm going to evolve. However, isn't what I'm saying important? No, it's not. And that was really difficult for me to adjust to. And as you can tell to this day, it's like I've adjusted a lot about my system, the tone, the intensity, all these things over the years. But guess what's never changed? What I was saying. And so ultimately, it wasn't the tone, it wasn't the intensity, it was what I was saying. And what I was saying
and
was,
how you were saying it.
Well, I'm telling you, I changed how I said it, and guess what? They still didn't like it. It didn't matter. That's what I mean. Like if I yelled and screamed it, I said it really quietly. If I was calm, if I was anxious, it didn't matter, right? It didn't matter how I got you to train. If you didn't train, the end result. If you did train, we got the result. Does that make sense?
You obviously did much more than training. You also coached and mentored those people after they were trained. So they continue to hone in and improve their skills. I'm a firm believer because I mentioned earlier and you agreed, no coincidence, chance, or luck. There's a road to the sale. Van Tile pounded that into you. There's a road to the sale. Now, it's all about relationships and people, yes, but there is a method to what's going on, and it leads somewhere. And where it leads is to your pocketbook and helping other people achieve their goals and their dreams and their ambitions about what they're buying and what it represents. And it's like, I started selling cars in 1985, Jonathan. The average salesperson in the United States sold 10 cars back then. Now we're at 2025. You know what the average salesperson sells today? It's still 10 cars. Actually, it's
probably 6 or 7. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, 9 point something. It's like, hello.
You want to know one of my proudest accomplishments?
Sure.
The average salesperson sold 15.8 cars for me.
That's impressive.
Over a 23-year career.
Yeah.
And you know how I did that? Being intense, commanding, but on the right things. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I laugh at all that stuff, but like I said, that was, it was so interesting that something that you were so revered and respected and loved for, something that made you so successful, like that was all of a sudden like, hey, we're, we need you to tone it down. We need you to calm it down. We need you to go. So it's like, I didn't understand where this insane pushback was coming. But like I said, I was willing to change. And I do believe I spent a lot of those years adjusting to, instead of not really realizing that it was basically alienating me or boxing. There are a lot of good groups out there that I would have worked really well with and worked, fine for. I unfortunately found myself in probably what's more the majority right now is there's either you're a public or you're acting like a public, and the mentality and the attitude is one where expectations become weaponized against those expecting it instead of the tool you use to get somebody to accomplish. And so that's I literally, as I saw that and I saw the writing on the wall, and every time and going back to Warren Buffett, I'll never forget, I was in a V Auto conference in Chicago. I think it's 2014, 15 maybe, and Brian Benstock was the MC. And it was at that he announced that Warren Buffett was going to buy Van Tile. And I remember looking at my wife at that time because, we were just the, baby partners. And I said, that's it. He just ruined it. And she goes, what do you mean? I go, well, he just announced to the whole world that there's a lot of money to be made in the car business. And what that did, unfortunately, is it did take a lot of us who were the younger guys who were, as the guys, the Chesrons before us, the Mitch Pierces, stuff like that actually came before us and had the opportunity to move up and then sell off at insane numbers, right?
I'll tell you what, you remind me a lot, Brian Benstock. He's intense. Yeah, he's a great guy, man.
Yeah,
phenomenal guy.
Oh yeah, so he was, again, he's a great example of it, right? He got in the car business, had a great mentor, worked his way up the chain, ended up buying into the dealership, ended up getting, you know what I mean? That was the career path. When Buffett did it, when AutoNation did what they did, they really kind of ruined that for the little guy. So what I did was I said, hey, what's like the car business was 30 years ago? What's a lot like what this business was 30 years ago. And now with that perspective, it was a lot easier to see. And again, I had a lot of guys, the car business ran a lot of guys off, and they'd go to roofing, they'd go to mortgages, they would go to construction. I'm sure I'm missing a few, stocks, whatever else it was. And then they'd all, somehow, some way kind of find their way back. But one of the ones that seemed like they didn't come back from was, the roofing world. And so I kind of was intrigued by it for a long time. I hated the whole idea of the door-to-door sales. Thought that was awful. Thought that was atrocious. One of the things I loved about the car business was people came to me. Right? Yeah. I used to tell people that all the time. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is the best thing in the world. They come to you. And, I'd beat that into my guys' head that they come to you. What a blessing. And so that was one of the turnoffs about the other side of it. But as I really dug deep and I looked at it, we operate on razor thin profit margins in the auto industry. It's some of the smallest out there. And it leaves, I don't think, people realize they just see the dealerships, they see all the cars, they just assume everybody's making a ton of money, and they don't understand how easy it is to flip that really quick.
That's right. Fast.
Never once lost money in any of the stores. I remember in the 2009 getting down to a $13,000 a month profit, but never lost any money. But very quickly, and actually, we took over a lot of stores, bought a lot of stores that had done that. So we, very very quickly saw how that can happen. And I don't think people realize that. So it's very scary in that business for things to turn, and you're in big trouble. So having a little bit more cushion that way was nice to see. But the most radical thing I saw was the experience that was being provided for the customer. And it was just like what I saw in the car business. So it took me a little while when I was a kid to realize this, but my favorite sales technique is actually a quote by Lee Iacocca. And he goes, the best sales technique I've ever found is to tell people what I want and what I'm willing to give to get it. And I took that as a very young guy and said, listen, I'm going to make my whole, process based off of that. And so what I wanted is I wanted to sell you a car. What was I willing to give to get it? I was willing to give you world-class service at an incredible value. I was saying that term before anybody, had even like it
Yeah,
was cool at all to say world class service, right?
that's
But I
interesting.
formulate that in my head.
Yeah, my Lee Iacocca quote, because I remember when he turned that puppy around, was, ladies and gentlemen, in the end, you can sum all business up to three things: people, products, and profits, and the most important of which are your people. And I believe Charity has a question. We want to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to blend two together here. So when do you think this turning point happened? And what was the turning point for you?
Oh, so, well, are you talking about like specifically within culture wise?
Yeah, well, just from when you decided like this strange stuff is happening to the culture of the corporate automotive business, and I'm done. Was like a specific turning point,
Yeah.
and when was that?
Yeah. Was there a defining moment?
So yeah, so there's what I give to you is a couple, eye openers. One, like I said, was Warren Buffett coming in, making things so much more expensive. I went, ooh, that's kind of a problem, right? So these kind of build up over time, right? The second really big one was when I did say that in a meeting, women and children get sick, not men. And then I was reported, and again through an anonymous hotline.
Ah,
This this is
Um,
this is the I'm a partner in the dealership, right? And then of course it's like anonymous. Sure, guys, people find out. Everybody's talking, running their mouths,
oh
right?
yeah.
You find out. And the sad thing was it was a person that had been hired as an assistant service advisor. I'd spent a lot of time with, turned into an advisor, then turned into an assistant service manager, then turned into my service manager over like 2.5 years. And for whatever reason, it, decided to take that. It, didn't come to me, didn't talk to me, took offense to that, called the hotline. I get a phone call from our lawyer, and I was
Oh
just,
my God.
oh wow!
wait a minute, wait. Why is my partner not down here talking to me? Why am I like? Are you kidding me? What just happened here, guys? I just walked into the twilight zone. So that was very that was one of those moments where like I don't know. Sometimes I do believe these, like this stuff can be politicized and weaponized, and it can become games. And
Sometimes, hell, much more today than ever.
probably right. And before you couldn't use stuff like that, now you can. And so anyway, that was a really big sign. Well, like I said, as it progressed, COVID hit. The alcoholism. For it's always hard to say you're an alcoholic when there's during that 3 year period of time. But yes, if you put alcohol in front of me, I won't stop until it's gone or I'm dead. So it's no question we don't do it. But that was kind of a signal, magnifier too. Your kids have grown up. This business feels like it's really rejecting you. It outpriced you, and you had done some pretty dumb things here at the end. Like I said, with the with COVID and getting becoming addicted. So it was a good chance in life to go like, look, you've always said that this you've always said that this business is going to go exactly where it's going, guys, which we all know. Tesla, I fought and kicked and struggled, and guys, we all know it's going there. And if you don't, you're crazy. Whether or not it happens in the next 5 years or 10 years, I've just lived through 30, so I'm assuming I'm living through another 30. By the time my second career will be over, it'll 100% transition to that. So it's coming kicking and screaming, but at some point it's going to be 100% online. I do believe service and parts is where dealers maintain, provide, sustain, could do exceptional things. That's why I love Mr. Benstock as well. The things he does in that world.
Oh my God, revolutionary.
Revolutionary, right? So I do believe that's where if dealers get their heads wrapped around this and stop, start thinking of themselves as service centers and start thinking of themselves in that way, they would kill it.
So let me ask you this, Jonathan. What you just, how you summed up those two questions with everything that was going on, writing on the wall, but also the alcoholism too. Was it all happening or unraveling for you at the same time, or?
No, yeah. So let's say like when COVID hit, it was so crazy because I wrestled for many years. So then after I stopped wrestling, I got involved in jiu-jitsu, right? So this is a very a great way to expel a lot of aggressive energy. That stopped, right? A dealership operating with 120 people stopped, right? You know, I had at that point I had 3 kids out of my house, so just 2 of them were at home. No, I guess 3 were at home. 3, she was a senior in high school. So, you know, like everything, it just, you know, came to an abrupt end. And then the alcohol. Now, unfortunately, with the alcohol, you know, my Scottish blood allows me to drink without a hangover and with a great memory. These are awful curses of the Scottish. So we don't have the same effects to alcohol that most people do. So I was probably able to maintain a little bit longer than I should have. But anytime you're drinking at that level, you're just covering up a wound, right? The wound, guys, when I sold out of the Elway Group, and we sold that off to Asbury, it was my 6th child.
Yeah.
And
I get it.
yeah, so it was really difficult to think about having to once that was done to go back, start over, play with the HR departments, all the nonsense and stuff. So I thought, man, there's got to be something better, right? Spent some time, got sober, really looked hard into the home services and saw that home services aren't servicing homeowners.
So what did you do on the sobriety side? What was
Oh man, you want to know? Like I said, I did everything. I go 100%.
No, because I can relate to that. And, you know, a lot of people in this business are going to be listening to that can as well. You mentioned something earlier. See, the drugs and alcohol weren't my problem either. It was just a mask. I was covering other things up.
So you want to know the insanity of this is anybody who worked for me, and I say this, that I drank, they'd go, what? They like, it's so far outside of my character. Then the people that worked for me during the period of time when I was drinking will say, what? They didn't even know. This was 100% in the closet drinking. Nobody in my family knew.
No.
Nobody knew. I didn't go to the bar and drink. This was
just you.
Just me and a bottle of vodka, right? And, you know, so it was bad. Like, it was like, once it started, it was like, oh, I can have a drink, you know, I'm going home. I'm going to have a drink. I'm going to calm down. Right. Maybe that lasted for a week. And then it was, oh, we're going to have a drink in the middle of the day. And then it was, you know, we're going to have a couple and 3 and the 4. And then, I mean, it didn't take long. It became 24/7. Like, and if you didn't drink, you know, you see in Leaving Las Vegas, the, you know, shake and stuff like that. Like, it, boom, you know, like
DT tremors and
like stuff that people are like, that happens over a lifetime of drinking.
So did you wake up? Did you wake up, or did you have a burning bush thing, or did someone slap you and say, "Hey, Jonathan, dude, you're fucking things up here, man," in a big way?
You fuck a lot of things up, and mainly you do it with the people that you love the most and that are the closest to you, and those are the ones that do notice, and you can't hide it from. And
you think you can, but they know.
You know, even that person like my wife, who you think probably knows me better than anybody, I was able to hide a lot from her, actually way too much from her. And even when she did ask, I was able to lie and her believe. But guess who you can't lie to, and guess who? Your children. They just know. You know what I mean? They know dad's not right. They know something's off and that something's wrong. And so, you know, I went through. I did 4 detoxes. Okay, have you ever detoxed off of alcohol?
No, I have not. That I was the drug. I drank all the time, but I kept going because of drugs. No, detoxing for alcohol is more dangerous unsupervised than heroin addiction.
Actually, there's only 2 detoxes that you can die from. One's heroin and the other is alcohol. Like, so you can detox off meth, you could detox off fentanyl, anything, and it'd be painful, but you'll come off it.
Your body will say, "Hey, thank you very much." Yeah.
It is quite possibly the worst thing that you could ever experience. And you're like, well, why would you do it 4 times? I don't know. Other than to say that like I said, I do things.
Took what it took.
Yeah. So I went through that, and then I actually went through 2 stints at rehab. At the first one, I called a halfway house. That wasn't real. I think my wife was really mad at me, so that's why she sent me there. The second one was, but you know, there's a lot of things that, like you said, you're covering up. I mean, everybody's got trauma, you know, that we're dealing with. It's just how to deal with it, right? And I think, you know, my thought I guess what happened was is for so long I dealt with it. It was like this insane, fuel, this energy, right? The burner defeats the fuel for success. And so, growing up the way I did, where I did, how I did, and the family, the situation, the environment, and whatever, we could all stem to abuse and all these other crazy things that everybody has. But it does one of two things. It's that that factor that either makes you fight or run. And it made me run for years, right? And then I think COVID hit, and I couldn't run. I couldn't run anymore. Went out running, it caught me, right? And then so I grabbed alcohol and drank it away for a couple of years, and then I had to turn around and face it, and that was the reality of it. And a lot of times, like I said, you're working, you're grinding, you're doing all those things, and you're doing them because you don't want to slow down and you don't want to face some of those factors. So
Exactly.
that's part of it. Yeah, alcohol does a good job of making you not face those things too. So.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's you're I consider you very fortunate, and I don't know, you've been clean and sober for a few years, but it's like I'm still actively involved even after 30 years. I still go to meetings and sponsor people, and it is my life. It is a part of my life because it's so bad. But most people don't get it. I see so many people died over the last 30 years just in my home group. And it's like they come in and out and in and out. And I have this little thing, and a lot of people on here know. But if you don't do it, if you really don't do a fourth and fifth step, you're going back out. Period. The end.
So being in the car business, we've had so many friends that committed suicide, and or have died. And I think it's so sad. If you ever look, it's evident. If somebody died, we know they died of alcoholism, but the cause of death will never say from alcohol. Right? If somebody dies from a drug overdose, do you realize that they will proclaim their death as a drug overdose? They have OD'd on drugs. Okay.
Yep.
You will never ever see somebody die from alcoholism. Okay. However, alcohol will shut all your organs down, right? Isn't that crazy to think?
Yeah.
There's almost like a huge denial that or a hoax that everybody's put up. But I have friend after friend after friend. Now being in the business for 30 years, it's just been like over the last 7 or 8 years where you've just seen people literally put a gun in their mouth and kill themselves. The guy that followed me as the GM behind at Elway Chrysler Jeep Dodge, Bill Hendershot, sorry, an awesome guy. I've known him, worked at AutoNation for years, grew up, we're the same age. And I came in maybe a year and a half, 2 years later after I was there. And he was there for probably 6 months, and he, killed himself, right? After his fourth DUI. Well, these tragic stories just keep happening, right? Nobody's asking why, right? I think that's so funny. And there's two things. I think men should be men. There's no doubt you should be a man. And part of being a man is being honest about this shit too.
Yeah, well, I didn't know what it was to be a man. I had a great example of a father, but I rejected it. I was, it's like I all through sobriety, I have learned how to be a good father, a good son, a great husband. I had great examples, but I didn't pay attention to them. And I've learned how to be a friend, how to understand that if I don't love, trust, and respect myself, how on earth can I possibly love, trust, and respect somebody else? It's just, oh, I love you. You don't even know what the fuck you're talking about. You know what I mean? It's like, sorry for the French there. Charity would probably leave.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
I know we're getting close and we want to respect your time. So I did want to ask you, out of all your experience, what a nightmare COVID was, and the direction that corporate went, and your transition to roofing, do you have any regrets?
I think it's always so funny. There's two things. One, you can't have a regret, right? Because what's the point? It's a waste, right? It's like being frustrated. It's that rocking chair. I don't believe in frustration. I don't get frustrated, right? So I'm just going to use it to go all the way to anger, right?
Right.
At least that gets a reaction, right?
I love it.
The regret side it isn't necessarily there, and always people saying, "Well, I'm sure, I'm glad this happened to me because." I'm better off for it. I think that's bullshit too. I'd be sure as hell glad that none of this happened to me and everything turned out just fine. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want that to be that to be fooled at all. I think what I deem as regrets are, I think it's really important because for so many years, and I go by, and I was teaming up on the be a man thing, is like I learned more about being a man, not being a tough guy from my dad, or having to fight as a kid, or wrestling, or jiu-jitsu, or any. I learned more about being a man in sobriety, in the 12 steps, that I ever did in everything else.
Amen.
I learned more about being a man in this one fact of just being honest, right? I think what I said, you said that, what happened, well, the biggest mistakes I made was I lied. And who did I lie to the most? The person I love the most, the relationship that means the most, the one that's going to, last the longest. And already I've been with her twice as long as I haven't been with her already, right? And I mean, it's like you can be as tough as you want. You can say all the politically correct things you want in the world at work, and you go home and become a lying piece of shit to your wife, and you are no man. You were no father. You were no husband. You were, you know what I mean? So
You were a liar.
yes, and so the greatest regret out of all of this is that I was not honest, right? And I don't just mean about the alcoholism, because I wasn't honest about a lot of things that led up to the alcoholism,
Sure.
right? I wasn't honest back in 2016 when that was said, right? And like I said, I began to make adjustments and changes instead of just being honest, right? And there was a lot of honesty. Like I should have at that point just gone to my partner and going, why in the world are we not having this conversation? And there's a lot of things. So if you could call it a regret, maybe, but it is definitely a constant reminder that all the negativity and bad things that happened, because it's kind of funny, you look at your life, you're like, man, everything I touched was great. Everything I did was wonderful. And then I hit this wall, and everything I did was awful. And everything I did was terrible. Like, how does this happen? Everybody's like, well, you got to climb a long ways up. You got a long way to fall down, right? And a lot of people to kick and trip, as you did it. And why would they do that? Because you weren't honest, right? Or whatever. So, and I don't mean that, again, like blatantly lying to people. A lot of times people take honesty as that. I just mean with yourself. You didn't speak up when you should have, or you spoke up when you shouldn't have, right? You didn't read the book you should have, and you read the one you shouldn't have.
I got to tell you, even to this day, I still have those moments where I should have spoken up or done something, and I didn't. But you know what? I quickly get back on the beam real quick, where before I just would have sailed off and just floated out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I have a lot of tools, and it's a daily thing. And I don't think a lot of people, because it's a way of life is what it is.
Your honor and your integrity is alive, isn't it? It lives, and it's being fed or it's being starved. And, I do believe that. Thank you. I think that's exactly right. So my daughters, anytime they ever went on a date, their boyfriends have to meet. There's not a boy that's ever held the hand of my daughters that haven't talked to me first. And so imagine going through this for years. I have a very specific, conversation that said, and I bring them in, I sit them down in my office. I
love it.
It's just me and them. And, and I have a very frank, direct conversation, but I definitely let them know. I said, hey, even if my daughter wants to do something, I want you to think of something. I want you to think of me, because I'll fucking kill you. I'll bury you in my backyard. And guess what? You're right. I'll probably go to prison because you're dead, so it won't matter.
You won't know it.
And they just look at me. Their eyes are like giant and huge. And then I go, hey, and she doesn't open any doors. No, she doesn't pay for anything. No, do you need money? I'll give you money. But my daughter doesn't. No. Okay, this is what time she's going to have okay. You should probably have her home a half an hour early. Okay. And you know how many people told me, I can't believe you would say that. You're like, who are these boys that you say this to? Do you know their parents? No. But you know what, guys? There's never once been a time that I've regretted doing that for my daughters. And every single daughter hated it.
Oh yeah.
Hated it.
But they really love it.
Loved it after and loved for her sister.
Right.
And so I think sometimes the most difficult things that we have to do in life, the things that we know and we can or are capable of doing that we don't do, that's the insult on integrity, right? And so it wasn't that like alcoholism was what it was. It got a hold of me. I just needed to be honest about it and say it's got
Yep.
right. And as I do now and say that, right. And it's been a really difficult journey to get there and to be honest about it, with myself. So I could be, like you said, with other people. You got to love you before you can love anyone else. Huh?
Oh, absolutely. I got two very, very good friends of mine that got out of the car business in the last 5 years, and both got into roofing and have excelled. They've done really, really well. And I'm sure you are too. But we're really already even passed out of time. This conversation just went. We only probably, well, you covered a lot of stuff. We had a lot of questions. Yeah, it was great. So, would you ever even consider getting back in the car business?
I have really enjoyed this so much. It would be really difficult. I mean, again, there were the right reasons I left, the right reasons you returned. But I really do love what I'm doing right now because it's like, here's the thing is it's literally the Wild Wild West, right? They don't have processes. They don't have their marketing put together. And their margins are awesome.
Oh yeah, but they're starting to figure it out. They're starting to figure out the marketing. Yeah, some
of them are. So, like I said, now if you went back into the '90s, you had guys back then that had some of them figured out. Dylan Doug here in Denver, right, has always done a great job. That guy had a lot of things figured out, but very few people had it figured out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so what you're looking for is to look at something that's on its way but hasn't quite gotten there yet. So that's the thing. The thing that scares, I think a lot of car guys that do great in this, I think it scares them is the door knocking. And I mean, think about this. You rose the ranks. You're wearing a 3-piece suit every day. You're a partner. Everything that you ever wanted, right? Your demos, blah, 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 blah. And then the next day, you are literally in 100-degree weather out there knocking doors on people. They don't know you from Jack.
No.
Not calling you sir.
No.
They don't care who you are.
But you know what? Once you get started, you get a few of those, and it starts to domino, and the neighborhood, and the referrals. I mean, it goes pretty fast if you know what you're doing, and know what you're doing.
It does, yeah. Once you know what you're doing, there was the key. Yeah. That was just it, and that's why everybody have such a hard time adjusting from what we do over there to what you do here. But once you adjust to it, you're like, why would I go back to that? Is I guess the
yeah.
Right?
No,
so once I adjusted, I got it. I was like, I don't know if I would ever go back. It's hard going up every day to a dealership 6 days a week in a
We have one more final question.
Are there any questions that we didn't ask you today that you wish we had, or anything that you wanted to say in general?
From the female perspective, because you definitely, I mean, you have that side of it where my percentage of females in the dealership, maybe 5%, right? It's not very common at all, right? It was always my controllers, the ladies in the office, right? And again, I'll be honest, like I held them at a different regard. I didn't care how they dressed. I didn't care when they showed up. I didn't care. Those ladies could do anything, and they took great care of me. So I always, I did always believe that there was a difference. I treated my top salesperson better than my worst. You know what I mean? So coming from that dealership world and kind of having an idea and maybe an understanding of where I'm coming from or not, what's your attitude and opinion on all this?
Well, I grew up not in the automotive business, but I worked for a lawyer for years, and he'd come in and tell, what would be very inappropriate jokes and stuff today. And it was just comedy, just kind of like giggle or whatever, I don't care. What we cared about was getting the work done, doing a good job. And for me, I think, I don't blame you for everybody being so sensitive. It's unnecessary. I've had great experiences with men in my life that they've done great things for me. Great things throughout my whole life. And they've done all different kinds. And in the way that I got into business, when you adapt to the personality of who is managing you is what you do. And so it's kind of foreign to me as well.
Yeah. What was always really interesting is like I was so far on the other side of everything was about my family, about my marriage, my wife, sexual harassment, affairs or anything. That stuff didn't happen in my dealerships, right? They just didn't, and everybody knew that. And there was never a time when a female would come in that I was always smart about it. Always kept my door open. Always made sure that conversation could be heard. But it was everybody knew everybody was treated the same, and anything they were treated better in that regard. Sure. And what was so crazy to me is something that I always saw was as me being a gentleman, right? Was the thing that was weaponized against me. That's what I thought was so crazy. It was the fact that I was so authoritative on that side of things, right? I like if somebody did again, we cuss and yell and scream, but if there was a female involved, shut up. That's just the way it was, right? So I didn't have that. If somebody said a crude joke in front of a female, we'd be like, hey, we don't do that, right? That's when it happened.
Now you got to be careful even talking that way in front of other men.
Yeah, so it was really
that it's like I get it, I really do, and things have really changed, and they're changing. We're all adapting the best way we know how, but I know. I think we have 33 employees now, 34 employees, something like that. We are just exploding right now, and it's really great. And I got to tell you, kudos to Charity. We wouldn't even be here, Jonathan. I mean, listen, I'm so ADHD out in it. It is unreal. Charity knows exactly how to work me and how to get me to do what needs to be done. She puts all this together, and I just show up. Now I know a lot of the people, or a lot of the people I know a lot of the same people. We haven't got 6 degrees of separation, whatever the case may be. But this woman makes it happen. She is an amazing talent, and so. Charity, you're on the air in front of Jonathan and everybody else. So, Jonathan,
there wasn't a dealership I ran that my controller, my partner in the store, I mean, was 100. Still to this day, Roxanne, the controller here, the CFO, is unreal, and that's what So every female I've ever worked with, they've been vital in the success.
Listen, I'm the emotional one. I'm the. My wife she's been retired now for 3 years, 32 years in the car business as a controller. She's seen it all. She's heard it all. People whining and crying and whimpering to her and talking about this and that. But she is my rock. I got to tell you, she's the one that keeps us grounded. I know what I need to do on my side, and that's just love her where she's at and do as much as I possibly can to show her that I do without expecting some unimaginable thing that I should get in return, because that's a setup, and you and I both know it. Charity knows it too. Jonathan Lampros, COO, Pro Roofing America. We are so humbled and honored to have you on our WTF podcast today. We really, truly are. It was a great, exciting. So all of you out there, I know a lot of you, we got a lot of like him, love him when he comes out, make comments. If you think it's controversial, get over it. You can make comments, whatever you want to do. But, these are the things that we need to hear. And I know a lot of you out there, we talk about a lot of this in the Zoom rooms and Clubhouse and stuff like that. There's a lot of great people out there that think and operate just like you do. And so thank you very much for reinforcing a lot of things that hadn't been said in a while, Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan.
Well, I appreciate you guys. Give a shout out to Brian Benstock and David Long. Both those guys have been.
David Long. Every morning we're in Clubhouse together. That guy is an amazing. He was on our show not too long ago.
Does he? He's been a huge help through sobriety as well, but he's been.
Oh yeah, I think 36 years he just celebrated. Yep, phenomenal guy. That's our yeah. So, he's a wonderful man, mentor, father, all those things.
And he's done it from. It's the same with Benstock, from a distance. That's what I think is really amazing. Coming from great car guys. So as you guys as well. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Charity, thank you once again. That's a wrap, everybody. WTF, Jonathan Lampros, COO of Pro Roofing America. Thanks again.